If you look at the 10 plagues, you'll see something interesting about the first 3. Moshe, doesn't start them. Instead, it's his brother Aaron, Aharon, who does. Before the first and the second plagues, it's Aharon who's commanded to take his staff and strike the water. And before the third plague, it's again Aharon who's commanded to take his staff and strike the ground. Why couldn't Moshe strike them? Rashi, the greatest of the biblical commentators, explains that Moshe couldn't do it because previously in his life, the water and the ground had protected him. The water had protected him when he was a little baby and his mother put him in a basket into the Nile. And the ground had protected him after he killed the Egyptian taskmaster who was torturing the Jew. After killing him, Moshe buried his body in the ground. And so it would have been disrespectful, it would have been a lack of gratitude for Moshe to strike the water or the ground, both of which had previously protected him. And of course, there's a beautiful lesson to be learned there. If we have to be sensitive to the feelings of inanimate objects and show them gratitude, then of course, how much more so do we have to be sensitive and show gratitude to our fellow human beings. But a later commentator asks a great question. He says, if we had been able to ask the water or the ground, are you okay with Moshe striking you to start the first 3 of the 10 plagues? They would have said, hit me, baby. Not because they were masochists, but because they would have realized the 10 plagues were an incredible Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name. That's when God was introducing himself to the Egyptians and to the Jews and to the world and beginning the process of the Exodus, taking the Jews out of Egypt and turning us into a nation. They would have gladly volunteered to have Moshe hit them. So why couldn't he strike the water and the ground? This commentator explains that who we are is dependent far more on our emotions than on our intellect. Moshe may have known intellectually that the water and the ground would have been okay with him striking them, but emotionally, the mere act of raising his staff and striking those items which had previously done him good would have had a terrible effect on him emotionally. It would have diminished his sense of gratitude and made him a less sensitive person. So that's why he couldn't strike them. And similarly, Maimonides, the Rambam, tells us that if you have a choice of giving $1,000 in charity to one person or $1 in charity to 1,000 different people, you should give the $1 to the 1,000 different people. Why? Because giving $1,000 to one person, it's a generous act, and it'll feel great, and it'll be great, but it'll wear off. Giving $1 to 1,000 people creates muscle memory. It'll turn you into a more generous person. And on that note, I saw an article about a study that was done recently by a group of psychologists. They took a group of people who were suffering from high blood pressure. And then once a week for 3 weeks, they sent each one of them a vial with 2 $20 bills in it, along with directions how to spend it. Half the group was told to spend it on themselves. The other half was told to spend it on others. At the end of the 3-week experiment, they took some health tests and found that the people who had spent the money on themselves, although they enjoyed getting money, there were no discernible differences in their health. But the people who were told to spend the money on others and did, there was a significant reduction in their blood pressure. The researchers were shocked to see that it was the same type of reduction that would have been expected had that group started doing aerobic exercise. But we shouldn't be shocked by those results because God created us. And he tells us to be sensitive and to be generous. And when we listen and we act in that fashion, we can't even imagine the benefits that we gain.
I'll give a little bit. I'll give a little bit of my life for you. So give a little bit.